Are we on?
Our sound's on, at least.
All right. He's back. Hey, guys. Welcome to Gateway Office Hours. I'm here with my co-founder and co-host and professional sniper, Carter Laren.
That's a new title.
New title. Anyways, he is, so watch out. Anyways, spent a couple weeks away, but got to watch the show as an observer. It was really cool.
I apologize for the show.
Hey, you didn't get us in trouble, so we're all good.
It's unusual for me, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Zeev and Brandon, for filling in for me. It was actually a really good perspective to kind of just see how the show flowed and look at the camera angles and the perspective and the lighting and all that kind of stuff. And come back.
And you came back and changed everything.
I did.
Right away.
I did. And hopefully it's looking a little bit better. If it's not, just let us know. You can leave comments in. Otherwise, we got a great show. We got some engagement through the week and people asking questions. I think we got some good topics to talk about today. First, just a few quick announcements so I don't forget. If you're watching on your mobile, I think up above you can hit follow and make sure you get the announcements so every time we're on live that, well, we can stop messaging you about it. Also, don't forget to vote for us for South by Southwest. Along with the other cannabis panels, it's going to be an exciting show next spring. I'm not sure how excited I'd be to return to Austin for South by Southwest necessarily. It's a little bit of it's a big party, right?
It's been years since I've gone, but it was... you sound like a douchebag saying it used to be fun, and then it got like. So I'm not gonna like. It's a lot of partying.
I would love to go and represent the cannabis industry, and not party too much.
Right.
More importantly, or equally important, we have the Elevate Conference coming up September 20th. Go to elevateconference.com to register. Great speakers, Silicon Valley, cannabis industry, investors, top startup CEOs. It's going to be a really awesome day. And you get to see the Gateway company's pitch. So that's pretty cool. What am I forgetting? Am I got anything? A few stragglers here?
I don't know. People can tweet at us if they've got questions. We probably won't check. But maybe
leave messages.
Maybe next time
we
will check if we don't check this time.
Yeah. So we've had our first admissions deadline for the second cohort of Gateway. Really awesome applications coming in. I don't know if you've had a chance to take a look.
I saw a few of them, and like the quality is much higher than. Not that we don't love our current cohort, but the quality of applicants generally is higher, which is good.
Yeah. There was I know I got back from my travels, and there was a beautiful little brownie sitting on my desk with a presentation that was professionally printed, and I was really impressed. You know, it's like this is next level type of shit, right?
Yeah. Chris from Willow is our current cohort. He's sitting over here, like, giving me the evil eye. You're awesome, Chris.
You are awesome, Chris. We love you. Anyways, so we're now moving on to the testing and interview process for Gateway Cohort 2. If you happen to not get your applications in, it's okay. You can still submit them. We might just not be the most timely in responding. So...
we'll try. If they're awesome, we'll try and get back to you.
That's true. I think Pranav got his in on the very last day.
Yeah. And Pranav, I think, is definitely at the top of the class, like one of the top companies right now. So
Sure. All right.
So there you go.
Enough with that. Enough announcements. Let's get on to the good stuff. We had some great people tweeting at us throughout the week and asking us questions. You were traveling and I was traveling and getting questions, from different people. So I think we've boiled it down to 3 major topics. If you have other things you'd like to talk about, feel free to reach out to us right here. And if we see it, we'll go ahead and address it on the air. If not, we'll get to it next week. But to kick things off, just kind of an open-ended question. I think the first thing that we need to talk about is, what do we want to see? Like, what kind of tech do we want to see coming into the industry? Actually, what's easier for me to answer actually is what I don't want to see.
I'll
let you start.
I saw that question, and I actually don't even think it's the right question. And I always hate when people ask me. I mean, it's cool for people to say, like, what do you think about blankety blank. And a lot of founders, because I've been an angel and advisor for years, like they'll come up to me and say, like, what do you think about this idea? And, I give my opinion, but the truth is, it doesn't really matter what I think about an idea or what I think about the tech, right?
Right.
What matters is, like, what does the market think about the idea? And
or what does the market need? Or
right. And so, partly saying, like, what technology do we want to see in cannabis is, like, who cares what we want to see? Yeah. What technology do we think there's a market need for? That's a separate question. And
Sure. So, I mean, that is the question, right? So where do we see opportunities and where do we see needs?
I think a lot of I don't think this is unique to cannabis, but a lot of first-time founders intuitively run to B2C solutions for tech, and
because it's sexy, right?
It's sexy, and it's also something that you can relate to as a consumer very easily, right? Oh, we should have a vape pen that does blah blah blah,
right?
Or it's shaped like this, or it charges like this, or measures things like that. And it's very easy to jump to that kind of technology solution. And sometimes those are good ideas, and I'm not throwing those under the bus by any means, but there's usually a lack of interest in B2B stuff. And if you look at cannabis in particular, I think the labs have a pretty human-intensive, inefficient process, and there's a lot of work for labs to do stuff and have consistent results, which is also difficult. So there's probably a lot of opportunity for lab tech. Frankly, there's still opportunity for extraction technology at scale that's reliable and consistent and safe and clean and all that kind of stuff, and does a good job. So I like the B2B tech stuff.
Yeah. There's also like non-tech, right? There's like, well, true B2B delivery, right? There's
I was going to wait for the next question for that because I know it's coming, but
there is the next question, but we can get into specifics about it. But B2B delivery is like a huge opportunity, right? There's a lot of product moving around the state. It's very regional how product is produced, and people want that product whether they're in San Diego or Humboldt County.
Yeah, I mean, it's the old. Was it Peter? Was it Peter Drucker who said this? I don't remember. Or maybe it was Peter Lynch. Some Peter.
Not Thiel.
Not some Peter who wasn't Peter Thiel, who's older. Used to have this investment philosophy where you invest in like the boring stuff, and he would talk about like, garbage collection and like funeral homes and stuff that no one is paying attention to, and he found that exciting. And similarly, I think there's a lot of less glamorous stuff that's actually quite exciting from a business perspective, and the logistics of B2B are another one. There is some glamorous stuff though too, like we there's the genetically modifying yeast to produce cannabinoids. Like there's some cool deep biotech that's really awesome,
it is cool,
right?
We shouldn't advocate for it because then we get hissed at when we're on stage in Humboldt County.
Whatever. I mean, look, it's never going to replace people who are looking for the highest grade strain from particular grower in Humboldt County. There's room for Budweiser and craft beers in the world. And
I actually argue that it'll free people up to actually design the strains that they want to design, because that we won't be pressured to be producing like these high intense amounts of like, CBD or THCV or whatever it is that we're looking for.
Right.
If we are able to actually produce these cannabinoids in mass quantity, then we'll open up the craft market to actually produce the strains that they truly want to produce.
Yeah, and it actually might keep margins on the plants higher generally, because otherwise it just becomes a race to the bottom for how cheaply you can grow, which I don't think anyone is really looking forward to from the cultivation side. So
sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so we covered.
That was a long.
We started diverging. So we have like kind of like the biotech side, which is super interesting stuff. We have very kind of manual business type of things where you're talking like B2B deliveries, and then there's the tech side where we all know about seed, or most of us, seed to sale tracking, but there's a lot of other things, lab logistics and whatnot, that need to be addressed, and some of them are kind of being addressed right now, but we're still very much in the V1 of the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. We're in the V1 of the industry, and I think there are a lot of hard problems that may appear boring on the surface, but provide a tremendous amount of value on the back end to be worrying about. I mean, just to shout out to Chris, who's was giving me the evil eye earlier, right? I mean, he talked about Willow. He was on Investing in Cannabis recently talking about Willow. What you didn't mention, Chris, was the AI future of Willow, right? And the machine learning aspect of it. But,
we have a few weeks of pitch practice left before.
Yeah, he'll get there. But, just having that amount of data and being able to, there's some cool things you can do when you have that amount of data, and being able to leverage it and really help people operate businesses more efficiently and just help consumers, make better decisions. So
that's actually
kind of a simple thing that maybe exists in other industries, but just isn't.
Well, I mean, we're going to be talking about this at Elevate, right? Like the potential for data to influence the cannabis industry. I mean, we have companies like Confident Cannabis and Headset and Cannabis Reports. All these guys are going to be coming and talking about how data can really influence the future of the cannabis industry. And similarly, with Willow, being able to have that database of questions and answers that people have about cannabis, it's really just going to do amazing things in the near future. I think.
Yeah, and
you're
really mentioning Confident Cannabis and Headset and those guys. I mean, you look at Flora and the genetic data that they're collecting and the phenotypical expression data, and that's going to be huge. And it can really, help the bottom line of people who are developing new strains and stuff. And efficiency is a big deal. So. You can do magical things with data.
Magical things.
So I think that's really cool. I mean, the technology that I'd like to see is stuff like that. Frankly, that's really enabling something cool, especially on the B2B front. So
cool. All right. Well, let's drill down into one of these topics, and you alluded to it. Canna Naturals on Twitter. Shout out to Canna Naturals. Very active, actually. Thank you. Interested in the B2B deliveries and the California Type 12 licensure, and wants our thoughts. I mean, it's a very open-ended statement. First of all, 2018, the licenses are going to come out. I mean, there's a lot of groundwork to be done in between now and 2018, I guess.
Right.
But what are your general thoughts about just kind of building a business around this new type of license that's going to be rolled out in 2018?
So there's some caveats to all this, but I mean, we should start by saying, I mean, you and I have had this conversation, we're kind of waiting for the UPS of cannabis.
Right, yeah.
We love the idea of logistics.
Because things that are out there right now, On Track or Golden State Overnight, or, I mean, FedEx, I guess, if you're brave. Anyways, there's workarounds right now that people are trying to use, but I mean, one night it might be working, and the next day you might be shut down, right?
Yeah, and look, there are some unique business differences. I mean, forget the regulation, there's some unique qualities to transporting cannabis and unique business requirements for the industry that are not being addressed. And you've got a really inefficient process right now where everyone has to build their own little fleet of delivery things, or they have to use someone who isn't supposed to be delivering cannabis, or kind of pretends like they're not. Sure. And if they find out, you get in trouble. And that's so. I think the market is dying for it. The caveat is there are some legal and/or regulation hurdles. So which you brought up. So the one thing now is, so I actually talked to before the show. I talked to Alex Zvel about this.
Love Alex.
Shout out to Alex. Thank you, Alex. He's he should be a lawyer.
I think he's too busy to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about this with him. He should be a lawyer, but he's too busy doing the hard work that
he knows the law better than almost anyone I know. So totally. He's my lawyer.
You're a lawyer in my book, Alex.
Yeah, only in the good way though, Alex. But I mean, I talked to him beforehand, and he reminded me, look, you got a couple issues. One is right now, anyone touching the plant, near the plant, transporting the plant, really the only justification in California is that you have a medical license and you're part of a collective. These new regulations we're talking about, this Type 12, this is the 2018 thing. It's not clear how it's going to be implemented. So there's some risk there because we don't know what it's going to look like. So from a conceptual level, super excited about delivery. From how will it actually work? I don't know, because the laws aren't clear. And right now, you're getting away with it only if you have a 215 card and you're part of a collective. Now, this kind of brings up, so there was a recent, we talked about this yesterday too, right?
Yeah.
The Ninth Circuit Court just ruled that if you try to buy a firearm, the federal government can block you if you have a medical card.
Do we know to what extent like that is this going to be an automated system where it's going to be an immediate flag? It's like, you're in a database.
I have no idea. And I know a lot of people in the cannabis community there's not a huge overlap with people who buy firearms all the time. So like maybe a lot of people in the community are like, I don't care.
Yeah.
But it actually does have implications if you think about the banking and delivery problems in cannabis, and the solution there, at least in the short term, is to have some kind of security service that, kind of like the Brinks or whatever of cannabis. And you in Colorado you see armored cars and stuff like that. Those people need to be armed. They're transporting massive amounts of money and or product, and it's dangerous for them to not be armed. And what does this ruling mean if you're starting a company?
They just become moving targets at that point, right?
Right. And so the question is like, well, can you hire security guards that are armed? Like maybe not. Maybe you can't buy them. Maybe they can't buy a firearm if they also have a medical card, and they can't transport the product unless they have a medical card. So I think that's potentially a monkey wrench in this whole thing. But it's still an interesting. The B2B delivery is still super interesting to me, at least.
Yeah. And it's kind of a very classic company structure, right? It's like you buy a fleet of vehicles, you have a protocol. Like, I mean, there's not a whole lot of questions as far as how to do that. I mean, you need to know California in particular is quite complicated, right? Like knowing how to navigate all the different rules about going through different counties and cities, and are there rules that govern that, and knowing how to operate around state borders. And
I mean, it's a logistical nightmare, but it's a solvable logistical nightmare.
Right. It's not very complicated.
No. But again, there's some questions about what regulation is going to look like. And the federal government, who knows what's going to happen? We'll have a new president soon, whoever that is. And, who knows what they're going to do? Are they going to use this Ninth Circuit ruling to really adamantly crack down on people trying to start these kind of businesses, or are they gonna who knows, does it get moved to Schedule 2 and then they enforce that? Who knows? Right. So but yeah, I mean, B2B delivery generally, there's a need for it. So and I think eventually it's going to happen. So someone's got to do it eventually, and if you can figure out how to navigate these rules and set up a company that is flexible enough to kind of ride the uncertainty until there's some certainty, and maybe even help write some of the rules so that you can have a good business, then it's a great idea.
Cool. All right. Well, Candid Naturals, hope we answered it. If we left anything hanging, please let us know. We'd really like to address it.
Yeah, please do.
But for that, we'll now move on to the next Twitter question that we received. Probably our most engaged community member.
Yeah, he tweets a lot at us. Thanks.
Yeah, so thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
Michael Fink Boehner? Boehner. I'm going to go with Boehner. Fink Boehner.
You can tweet the phonetics of your name to us if you would like. But yeah.
Yes. Okay, hardware is hard.
Yes, it is. So, well, I mean, he had a more specific question, which is like hardware is hard, and then how does that apply to the cannabis
industry? Any industry-specific issues for cannabis hardware startups to keep in mind?
Yeah. First, we should talk about hardware being hard, because I don't know if everyone really understands that.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully you've heard the phrase, because it's true. I mean, just hardware is hard to do. It's a much more complicated kind of process than doing a software startup or something like that.
Yeah, and it's underestimated a lot. I mean, I think something like 9 out of 10 hardware Indiegogo campaigns that are funded actually don't ship.
Yes, it's been a huge problem, actually, for that
it's
platform.
A massive problem. And part of it is, part of it is just naivete about what it takes to actually manufacture and ship hardware, right? You can sit down with some CAD software and design something that's really cool, and you're like, yeah, this works totally. Why, woohoo, we can make it. And then you realize, oh, actually, it's not manufacturable because you don't know anything about design for manufacturing, or the supply chain is a problem, or the shipping costs are a lot more expensive. I mean, a lot of times people won't understand that they have to account for the fully landed cost of something before calculating their margins, and they don't understand how big their margins actually have to be at the manufacturing level in order to have a sustainable business all the way through retail. And so, if you're not used to hardware and you're kind of used to software, you can look at it in a naive way and think, wow, the margins are great. This is easy. I designed this thing. I get it funded. Woohoo. And it rarely turns out, it never turns out that way, basically.
Right.
I don't think that's any different for cannabis, right? I mean, that's the same. That's the same for any kind of hardware company. For cannabis in particular, I don't think there's anything super challenging on top of that, other than some stuff that we kind of already talked about. There's a lot of everyone's wanting to make a vape or some kind of. There's a lot of people also focusing on a much. What I consider too small of a niche to be a scalable business. Yeah. It doesn't mean it's too small to build your own business. It's just too small for Gateway. And so there's a lot of people thinking like, oh, well, if we only had a dabbing rig that did this particular thing and that particular thing and looked this way, it would be better. And then the truth is that's actually a very small market. And so,
and like people have addressed small markets, but then they become companies that have a vast product line. And so you're having to create this like hit factory where you're just like doing like hit after hit after hit. And it becomes
and that's hard.
It's very hard.
And then you're asking investors to bet on your team being capable of doing that. And that's a little bit scary, even if you look at even the software industry has a hard time doing that. I mean, look at, was it King, the company that did Candy Crush? Right? Like, they had Candy Crush, and then didn't they... I don't totally remember, so tweet at us if I'm totally wrong about this, but I think people were like, woohoo, Candy Crush, look at, they're going to be a hit factory, and then, crickets.
Yeah.
Right?
The gaming company that sticks out to me was Draw Something, right? It was like, they were at their peak when they sold to Zynga and just plummeted and man, and I just don't think
it's hard. It's a creative thing, right? It's hard to do that.
Yeah. It is hard. Yeah, nothing against the team.
I mean, look how many authors write a great novel and then nothing good after that, or how many one-hit wonders there are in the music industry. And to some extent, it's very similar.
So kind of coming from our perspective and as investors, as running, an accelerator program, people often come to us with their early stage hardware ideas. And I find myself asking them the same questions and getting the same shitty responses over and over again. I feel like it's upon us to give some advice as to a young hardware startup about things to investigate. One of the questions that I always ask is have you done this before? And if you haven't, how much is your first product going to cost? How much are the first 10 going to cost? How much is the first 100,000? What are your benchmarks? What are the inflection points? When do you ship out to China and get them to start making for you? Do you have connections in China? There's a lot of questions that pop up, and if you're doing a software startup or a cookie company, you can just start working in your house. But when doing a hardware company, there's a lot of legwork that has to be done before you even start tinkering with anything.
Yeah, and and the prototype cost is high generally compared to software.
Luckily, there's 3D printing now, which has helped in some cases.
Sure, that can help with some physical design, and it can help a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think. Do you have anyone on your team who's manufactured before? Do you have do you understand that whole chain? That's an important thing. I mean, so there's an advantage. So maybe this is kind of the opposite of the question that was asked, but there's actually an advantage, I think, to being a cannabis hardware company.
It's interesting. Okay, sure.
Cannabis as a plant has a very, very high profit margin compared to tomatoes or anything else, right? And so a piece of hardware and agricultural technology that maybe doesn't make sense to develop for the rest of agriculture might actually be worth it to develop for cannabis. And what that means is you could pay for the initial cost of developing this new technology through the margins that cannabis provides. So it becomes economically viable in the short term. And then you've got now, once it's, everything gets cheaper. At this point in the show, audio cut out. We apologize for the inconvenience.